Kel, you've always got a stack of news. Let's crack open your briefcase. Let's get into it straight away. The big story actually is nearly the immediate impact, if I've got it right, of the draft bidding system. I know it sounds very dry, but this has huge ramifications across the league.
Yeah, and we've spoken about this over the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, really, haven't we, as this has come to closer to fruition. Now, the AFL was hoping to confirm its new draft bidding system as soon as this week. It won't now, and Gather Round is next week, so there's every chance that it does get delayed a little bit further to past the Festival of Footy in Adelaide, as that gets the moment in the sun. But there's been some delays all the way through this as they've gone back and forward between club consultation, the right mix, what this all looks like.
Do you understand or have you heard what has been the major pushback? Like clearly Port Adelaide want some grandfathering in it, so delay it because they've made plans. But have there been other clubs particularly pushing back on a certain element of it?
Well, a big part of the pushback over the last couple of weeks has actually been the AFLPA and their interest in holding back this change that the AFL had proposed in that they were going to protect the top 10 picks from any free agency compensation picks being included. Now, to underline what that actually means, the Oscar Allen situation last year when he left West Coast, he brought in a top 2 pick for the Eagles in his departure. The Eagles then went and grabbed Cooper Duff-Tyler. Now, under the change that was proposed by the AFL, that pick 2 would then have been pick 11 because they wanted to protect the top 10 picks. Now, the AFLPA have come in and said, well, we're not as keen on that because that would restrict some movement potentially if the players as free
clubs
agents.
Are more likely to match and keep them there.
Exactly right. So if you're Zach Butters, all of a sudden the ability to move as a free agent is lessened. So if you're changing these things, so there's real doubt on that one. But across the past couple of weeks, we're getting closer and closer, as I said, to these new changes. And the clubs that would be most affected will be Carlton, will be Essendon, and will be Port Adelaide over the next 2 to 3 seasons. So there's still some toing and froing on the loading associated with these top bidding situations. So teams in the top 2 might have a 20% or a 25% loading on top of their points. And then, Joel, the teams in 3rd and 4th will have a lesser loading on that as well. But the reality is, and the underlining detail is that it's going to be a lot hard to match the bids as soon as this year.
Yeah, so all that in mind, like the clubs have known this for a period of time, haven't they? So, So what's the hold up in all this?
Well, I think because the Tasmania element is important as well, and the future trading of 3 rounds or 3 years in. So it actually would have impacted a lot of teams in the last trade free agency period because they've done the forecasting. And let's use the Port Adelaide example, and Cal, you can take over this conversation. They've got 2 of these pieces moving at once. So they've got Dougie Cochran, part of their father-son and NGA selection.
Potential number 1 pick this year.
And then you've got Zems Pilot out of their NGA as well. So under the old system, they've got that going, which then also dictates what you're doing around Zach Butters. So they're actually like 2 big pieces moving at the moment. So Port Adelaide are one who are going, oh dear, like we've made plans now with the ability to do things, 3 years in advance. They're asking, can you just slowly step change instead of immediate?
Yeah, and they'd put submissions in last year to grandfather the rules. And by that, I mean, make the decision now, say what they're going to be, but bring them in 3 years. And Carlton were on top of that, and Essendon were keen on that too. Now, obviously, there's self-interest there for those clubs, but other clubs have agreed that would work. But the AFL has been pretty strong on the fact that they want this changed sooner rather than later. They want clubs to bid as soon as possible and early as possible. They want to make it harder to match bids. They want to make it nearly impossible for clubs to land 2 early picks if you're an early team on the ladder. And they want basically the teams at the bottom of the ladder with the early draft picks to be able to access the best players.
Are we overreacting slightly because the current crop of father-sons are so elite? So what I'm going to say next, Cal, is Ross Stevenson on the Brecky Show has this line called unchecked. So it's a bit of a factor or a stat, and I have heard this bandied around recently, that the father-son rule's close to 80 years old. It's been around for quite some time. There's been 29 players who are father-son who have only played over 100 games. So the number is quite small. And you can remember a number of father-sons we played with.
Yep.
They didn't get over 100 games. You think the amount of talented sons of fathers that have come through and just haven't had long and illustrious careers at the AFL. But the issue we've got is some of the ones we've had of recent time have been magnificent.
Well, they've been premiership stars already, haven't they? Nick Dacos,
Ashcroft,
the past 3 premierships.
and then we've got Darcy, of course, who's going to be a start. So, is there a slight? I know we love to make the big stadium statements in the media, and we need to abolish it and things like that. But is there still room for romance, and are we overestimating some of this?
Well, the AFL clearly thinks
that's just a question. That's not an opinion.
No, that's fine, and that is an opinion that is out there, though, that it should just be absolutely uncompromised all the way through. But in making this tougher to match the bids, the AFL is saying we still see there as being room for romance in these father-sons, but you're going to have to pay full tote for these guys. And this is no criticism of Brisbane and Gold Coast, what they've done, because they've perfectly mastered the rules to the point where the AFL's had to change them, successive years. But the ability for the Lions to be able to match a bid on Will Ashcroft using picks in the 30s, and Sam Darcy at the same a couple of years before that in his draft, and Nick Dacos too with what the Collingwood Footy Club did to match that bid. The AFL is just not of the view that should be the case. So this is the change that will see that become a much firmer ability to match it. And if you want the player, if you want to make a bid on a player as well, you'd want to actually have them and keep them, because there's a chance in this system that they do pop out.
Is the major frustration the fact that also Brisbane was able to add through father, son and academy, but then also be added through the free agency market? Is that what's got really people's goat?
I think the complication with the Lions is that they've had great great father sons at the same time as great academy boys, and that's such a rarity, isn't it? I mean, as you say, the hit rate of the father sons is very, very low. I didn't know that it was 29. I'm surprised by
over 100 games.
Over 100 games, yeah, exactly. So.
Now that's unchecked, by the
way. but it's a low percentage either way. But the capacity for the Lions to get both of those things at once, I think that's what sort of brought this to a head. The AFL changed its rules in 2025 for a new DVI. The new head of footy, Greg Swan, has seen all sides of this, obviously being at Brisbane, seeing the academy situation. And the Northern clubs are pretty firm in the fact that their investment, their own financial investment in the academies would potentially change if they don't get access to the top-end talents as a part of their production line.
That's not only those Queensland sides, but that it's the Sydney sides also?
Exactly. Yep, it's all of it. And this would apply to all of the clubs. It's just the ones, I mean, this is the perfect storm, isn't it, that Carlton and Essendon are struggling. They've been through decades of struggle now, and they're probably the ones that are going to be hurt. But as I sort of said this week a bit, Joel, if you don't do it, if you want to do it and you've decided to do it, when do you do it?
Yeah. Well, and it's over $1 million investment from what I can believe too. It's been sort of put through the media a number of times that these clubs, and Tom Harley headed it up for a long time at Sydney and obviously understands that side of it. So now he's sitting on the operations side. It'd be interesting to see his take on it.
Daryl's up first. Good evening, Daryl.
Good evening, gentlemen. I've got a question for you. How can you possibly get away with the father and son rule when Australian rules football is built on tradition?
Well, I don't think they're getting away with it. It will remain. It just will be tougher to match a bid. And the days of getting Tom Hawkins at pick 40, it's been changed a lot.
Or Gaza.
Or
Matthew Scarlett.
Yeah, a couple of those helps. But the rule has been changed a lot, hasn't it? I mean, even from 25 games, 100 games, 50 games.
Third round pick you can use.
Exactly. So there's been a whole series of iterations to it. It will remain. It's just going to be harder to get those guys to your footy club.